Lynn, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks, Chris. I'm happy to be here.
So, just as we normally do, perhaps you could just introduce yourself to the listeners. And I know we had your sort of other co-founder on as the previous episode, but if you could perhaps introduce yourself and perhaps a little bit more about your background and what you do in the field and world of golf.
Okay, be happy to. Well, I'm Lynn Marriot, and I'm an American, whereas Pia Nielsen, the other co-founder of Vision 54, is Swedish. So we're an American-Swedish company. But so I'm American, and I played, a little background on me is that I played college golf competitively. And did quite well. But right after college, I decided I wanted to be a golf teacher. And much to the dismay of my parents, my dad wanted me to pursue playing on tour, and my mom wanted me to go to law school. And I said, I don't want to do either of those things. So I joined the PGA of America, and I became a golf teacher. And I've been a golf teacher classically trained in the beginning, of course, for like 37 years. So golf teaching's been a big part of my life. And Pia Nielsen and I, we co-founded Vision 54 in 2000, and we've been doing that together since then.
Amazing. I was going to firstly ask you, was it a tough decision not going pro after college golf?
Not for me. I think when I look back, you always realize things in retrospect is that I was a good player. I mean, I could shoot par and I could break par, but I couldn't take it low. I couldn't, I didn't know how to shoot 65 or anything like that. I really didn't know how to do that. And of course, maybe some of that was a bit technical, but really, I think for me, many often said to me like, yeah, Lynn, you have a great golf swing. But, and so I knew I just really didn't want to do it. And I think it's because I knew I didn't have the skills to do it. And I think, that fueled me later on to pursue what became my passion, which is really kind of the human side of golf and the human skills of golf. So not having those skills with a good golf swing, no one's ever going to make it, whatever making it is. So,
and the transition from playing college golf, nearly going pro, and then setting up Vision 54. What I know, Pia briefly broke down what Vision 54 is, but if you could remind us again and sort of the story behind that, that would be amazing.
Yeah, well, so Vision 54 is that we believe as a number that a player is going to shoot 54 or lower someday. And we truly believe that. And it's really inspiring for us to believe that. And we honestly think it's going to happen. We don't know when, and if it's going to be a man or a woman. And but we've actually coached two players that have shot 59. That would be Russell Knox on the PGA Tour and Annika Sorenstam on the LPGA. She's the only player that ever breaks 60 on the LPGA. So 54 is just it helps us really look at possibilities. And so we often say it's a number, but really more importantly, it's looking at all the possibilities in your game. And, I've found this to be so true is that so many golfers are more of a fix-it mindset. So they're into faults and fixes, like this is wrong with my swing and I've got to fix it, or this is wrong. And they're always looking at all the, bad things about their game. And we think they need to actually start looking at all the possibilities there are. So 54 for us is really representing all those possibilities that haven't yet been realized.
So one question I did have around about the Vision 54 was, the idea of birdieing or having the mindset of birdieing every hole. But when I was sort of just experimenting on it before the whole lockdown in the UK took place, and I found, say if one didn't birdie the first hole, or then birdie the second, or then birdie the third, then it felt almost like I was up against it, if that makes sense. And I'm sure people have come to you with this question before. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We've heard it a lot. So, Vision 54, we often say it's a number, but maybe more importantly, it's a process. And so, of course, you mentioned this, Chris, it's also a mindset, but the process is really what's important to understand what are the things, and then putting my actions on those things that are under my control. And that's part of what, people often say you need to focus on the process versus the outcome. And even though, 54 is an outcome, it's really, the whole thing is to shift to what can I do in my game, and what parts of my game do I need to put more action on that are more process oriented. And for us, that's really about having skills that are on the golf course. So, I get it. You go, oh my God, I'm 1 over, so I need to make 2 birdies to get back on the, but, it's not meant to be that at all. It's really meant to be an aspirational goal for many. Of course, we know, a skilled tour player can shoot 54 because many of them have already, I shouldn't say not all of them, but many of them had scores of 26, 27, 28, 29, 30 for 9 holes. And I think Pia maybe already mentioned this, but when Annika came off the 18th green after shooting 59, the first thing Annika said to Pia was, I know 54 is possible because I know how I got my own way. She got out of the process out there. Yeah. So, it's more mindset. It's a process. It's a discipline. And the discipline is to not get caught up in the outcome. Is to come back to all the time when you're on the golf course to things that are under your control and actions you're going to take.
Well, what would you say is one of the biggest things that we do get in our own way of?
Well, I think, we compartmentalize the skills on the golf course into 4 areas. Before the shot, during the shot, after the shot, and then between shots. And I think, when you look at any of those 4 areas, there's certain things that come up for players. Like before the shot, many are in doubt on their decision. Are they making the right decision? But every shot requires that you make a decision and then commit to it. So you've got to have a way that you do that where you feel you trust your decision. And then, of course, like during the shot, what we call the play box, but it's just our vernacular, is that that many just lose focus. Focus on what they're supposed to be actually feeling and paying attention to during that time. And so that today is a big one for many. That's how they get in their own way. And then many actually haven't learned that the post-shot reaction is a skill in golf. And so many have just kind of let that go and let it go where it goes, which for many is in a very negative way. So their emotional response becomes a hindrance. It's how they get in their own way. You can see that with a lot of golfers. They're better than their reactions actually show. And then, of course, many just actually don't know what to do between shots. So they start telling themselves stories that are doomsday stories or downward spiral stories and really take themselves out of the game. So I just tried to kind of compartmentalize it the way we see it because I don't think it's one thing you typically see. It's just that when you start to examine your game, you need to look at what areas could I get better at and where is it that each person tend to get my own way.
Amazing. I wonder if we could actually explore these 3 stages in more detail. So before, during, and after, and just dive into sort of maybe each one.
Sure.
So in the before stage, you said sort of doubt, making decisions, trust. So it could be like an overwhelming sort of amount of sort of information which a golfer needs to sort of perhaps take on during these stages. So what is the sort of best mindset to prepare, say, before and during these before the shot is made?
Yeah. So again, like in our language, we call that the think box because you actually have to make a decision and you need to have this ability to think about, okay, strategically, what's the best shot right here? What's what's being offered up, if you will, from where the whole location is to, where could you short side to what kind of putt do you want to leave yourself? I mean, there's all sorts of things, or where's the best placement of your drive for your second shot and so forth. So there's a decision to be made. And the biggest thing there in the think box is to make up your mind. Like you just, darn it, you got to make up your mind and decide on what you're going to do. So strategically, that's about choosing, quote, the right club or the right line of a putt. But it's also then making a decision on what you're going to focus on, what we call in the play box, which is actually the next thing going into the shot. So for many, I think they actually try to gather too much information, so their intellect gets almost emphasized in this. Like they double, triple check all the numbers, all that kind of thing. So we often say is that it's really about trusting your decision. And we actually look at some of the neuroscience with this, is that when we make a decision, there's actually kind of three brains involved. So, of course, we have our intellectual brain, which we sometimes just call the brain. Yeah. It's the one that computes and all those kind of things. Then we have something called the heart brain, and there's actually neurocircuitry in the heart. And they know there's actually more signals from the heart to the brain than there is from the brain to the heart, which is really interesting. Mm-hmm. And then there's a third brain in the body. There actually may be many more brains than that we're soon going to find out, through scientific research. But we know there is a neurocircuitry in the gut, what we call the gut brain. So here's how it goes. You walk up and you get your numbers and you do the wind calculations and so forth. And you go, okay, it's 135 yards. And for me, that might be an 8-iron. So I go, okay, I'm going to hit an 8-iron. And that's what my logic or my brain says. But my gut says, oh, wow, I didn't sleep very well last night. I had too big of a dinner and I'm a little tired. And gosh, it's actually, I'd be better to hit a 6-iron, like 2 clubs more. Right. But my logic says, no, we always hit an 8-iron here. So then there's this conflict. That little voice in our head that says, no, this is what it should be. And we've got to learn to listen into this gut brain of ours. It's actually older than the brain. So we need to get some sort of congruency or at least alignment between the gut brain, the heart brain, and the brain. And that takes time for people to develop, because I think many only make a decision out of logical metrics, if you will.
No, I think that makes. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, no. That's just it. So just learning that. So the way we train that with players when they come to Vision 54 is we actually go out on the golf course and we don't allow them to get the metrics or get the numbers, and they just have to walk up and choose a club or pick a line on a putt, more from an instinctual perspective or an instinctual decision versus trying to logically figure it all out.
And that sort of really increases the awareness of that side of the body and getting in tune with your gut and heart, I can imagine.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that is a really good example with the A-time, because there's been, I think every golfer can pick up moments when we've crunched a number and said that's our stock 6-iron or stock 7-iron, and we just know that the ball is never going to get there, or it feels like it's just going to shoot miles over the green. Something just doesn't feel right about it.
Yeah, exactly. I'll just tell you a quick story. We've coached quite a few tour players, and one of them is a Japanese player. She's no longer playing professionally, but she did reach number 1 in the world, and we coached her whole career, and that was Ai Miyazato from Japan. But I remember this story. She actually had a British caddy her whole career, and anyway, they were playing in Singapore, and they're on the 18th hole, and I had a 1-shot lead, and she had this shot into the green on 18, and Mick said to her very clearly, 6-iron will take us to the back. meaning don't hit more than 6-iron.
Yeah.
She was one of those players who really liked under pressure to rely on her tempo, which many players don't, but she really could tune into it. So she actually said, Mick, I'm going to hit a 5, which for him as a caddy, it's like, you almost want to talk a player out of that. But she took the 5-iron, made a golf swing that was maybe more around 75% of her full tempo, hit it 10 feet, made the putt, won the tournament. Right. And, it was just such a great thing because, again, you've got to know where you go under pressure. And for her, it was just, take more club and swing it smoother.
Yeah. Well, that shows you how in tune she is with herself in those moments. Yeah. Okay, let's move into the sort of play box in those during stages.
Well, that in a nutshell, if making up your mind is, before the shot, now you're over the shot, you're in the shot, and my God, pay attention. So be focused, we often say. And this is where, a lot of the performance science has validated that this is not a cognitive thinking attention. It's actually more an athletic sensory attention that you're doing here. So it's a sensory awareness. Or we often like to say it's time now to step in and be an athlete. And so we want golf in this case to be much more like all other sports, where it's more reactive, it's target oriented, you're in your body, you're totally present, and you go. And so that's a very trainable skill. But many, because they've taken a lot of swing instruction and so forth, they step into this play box, or, the moment of truth, we sometimes call it, and they're still preparing. They're still going through a checklist in their head. They're still having a conversation with themselves about what they're about to do. And that's not a good performance state. Because, the play box is really, it's the moment of truth. It's like, now we're on. This is the big deal.
When's a good time to move from transition from before to during? So when you're gathering all the data and analytics to standing over the ball and forgetting about it, when during that stage can they just let go of all the analytical information and just go into more focused stage?
Yeah, obviously, the decision needs to be made in what we call the think box, in that space away from the ball. And then once that decision is made, now it's go time. So now you're already getting into more of this sensory awareness, okay, of feeling how you want to feel the swing or feel the putt. In the putt, it would be more like feeling a distance response and feeling speed. You're no longer concerned about the aim or making the putt or anything like that. So it's that transition actually starts to happen even before you walk into the shot. Okay. If that makes sense to you. So that you're already transitioning. And the interesting thing, this has all been validated also through looking at brainwave activity, that those who, everybody in the think box is going to be more in a beta brainwave state. And beta brainwaves are just simply, they're the fastest brainwaves we have, or some of the fastest brainwaves we have. And it's what we do when we're talking like I am to you right now, or we're doing a math problem, or, talking to somebody and having a conversation with ourselves in our head while we're talking to somebody. So anyway, it's a beta brainwave. Then those who perform well, as they're stepping into the play box, they start shifting to what is called more alpha brainwaves. Used to be called left brain and right brain, but it's more alpha brainwave states in more specific brainwave, when they're looking at those brainwave activities going on. So the turns more into alpha, and sometimes it even turns deeper into what is called theta. But those who get in their own way, they go beta before the shot in calculating their decision, and then they step in and they remain in beta. So there has to be this transition, getting ready to now I'm in it. And so that has to be trained, and we really feel that that's a missed opportunity by many golfers is that that's actually a skill you can train every day on the range or on the putting green. But many don't. They just go there, unfortunately, to the range and only work on continuing to work on their technique or their mechanics.
Could you give us an example of how to train like that on the range?
Well, yeah. So you would set up, that's the title of our first book was Every Shot Must Have a Purpose.
Okay.
So you actually go through every shot having a purpose and going through a full-on routine, changing clubs every time, having what we call very specific play box awarenesses so that it is athletic and it is more sensory. And, you need to kind of discover on the range which play box awarenesses work for you or sensory awarenesses work for you. So some that can be like the other day I saw a guy that we coach on the PGA Tour. He did a social media post and it was all about feeling the lower body, and it's always been about that for him. Or another player might talk about, like Jack Nicklaus did, visualizing the shot in its entirety. So they hold that visual image in their brain while they're swinging. So it's just actually setting it up so every shot does have a purpose. Every shot does have a very specific play box.
And finding what works for you as an individual is probably the most important thing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That no one should ever tell you what that awareness should be. And you should try out lots of different ones. And then you're going to find that, you're going to come back to about a handful of ones that really connect with you.
I was explaining to Pia that I went through a stage of becoming highly analytical and very technical, and it just clearly wasn't working. And I then transitioned into, I was like, well, what if we did the complete opposite of that and just see things as, big draws, big fades, low draws, high fades, and
awesome.
I found that, as I'm sort of dyslexic and very sort of right-brained anyway, that really stuck with me, and sort of playing a bit like an inner child and creative. The more extreme the shot, the actual better I played. So although I perhaps wanted to be a technical player and sort of emulate a sort of perfect looking swing on the golf course, like a PGA Tour player or European Tour player, that just wasn't for me. And sort of being okay with that and embracing the way I play just led to better results.
Oh, Chris, that's so awesome. But you just did that after you had reached the point of this wasn't working, and then you gave it a shot.
Yeah, usually I think like anything in life, isn't it? You have to reach that point of I've had enough, and
right.
It's a real skill to take action before you reach those points. Whether it doesn't have to be on the golf course, it could be in relationships, it could be in business.
Yeah.
If you could do it before you ever hit those points, then you'd be a lot quicker learner than most. So, but yeah, for me on the golf side, it definitely took me to the point I've had enough of that, and now I must try something. But being aware of it was probably the best thing.
Yeah. This is a quick story, but we did a golf school here and at a private club, and this gentleman was attending, and he actually is a doctor. He's a heart surgeon at Mayo Clinic, and actually he's head of the whole cardiac department. And so he had joined this private club to get away from the stress of his job at the Mayo Clinic. And he'd taken only technical swing lessons. And he actually had a pretty good looking swing. I mean, like at least a 10 handicap. But he didn't score like a 10 handicap at all. I mean, I don't know. I can't remember what his handicap was, maybe 20 or something. But anyway, it was interesting because I said to him, as a surgeon, every time you go in you must have a playbook. You must have like a performance state you need to get into. And he said, oh my God, absolutely. He goes, I mean, that's what you do as a doctor is you train all those years, and then when you go in there, I mean, yeah, it's very different. You don't keep planning. You've already made your plan, and now you've got to actually perform. And he said the best way for me is, he says, I talk to the nurses and I music in the room, and he goes, I do things to keep my mind from going to the future or to the past or worrying about what could happen or go wrong in this surgery. And he goes, and I stay very, very centered present. I mean, it was just like exquisite the way he described it. And I'm like, oh, wow. I go, have you ever done that in golf? And he looked at me like, never. And so I said, okay, so let's just check it out. Like, I want you to use the same kind of play box with your golf. So I just want you to listen to the birds and the sounds outside of you while you're making a golf swing. And he just tried that thing out. And it was interesting because, I mean, the swing started to look freer. Didn't look so PC, like he was trying to put it into positions. And then, most importantly, is we went out on the golf course, and he hit some shots on the golf course he said he'd never, ever had hit in his whole life. You know, there's some tuck pins and things like that. But he was in a performance state, just like you. He'd let go of all the got to make it right. And he was able to, like, really get into that performance state because he related it, obviously, to something he already did really well. Yeah. And the good news is that he didn't resign from the club.
Right. I think there's a lot to it with people's professions and how their approach to the game. I've having lucky to play with a lot of people around the world, and like, for example, dentists seem to be very analytical about their game. Yeah. As you said, with like doctors or people in finance, they seem to take similar sort of ways or approaches to their profession into golf, but then also not apply them at the same time. It's funny. We often say, like, if we know we have an orthopedic surgeon as a client or a player in a that comes to a golf school, I'm like, oh, this is going to be a tough one. And the dentists, I'm like, oh, same thing, because they're so perfectionist. And then also we find trial lawyers because they're so contrarian. No matter what you say, they're going to see the opposite. Interesting. So what can those sort of, because I'm sure that we have golfers listening in those sort of professions at the moment. So what can they do to get out their own way?
Well, I mean, it's, again, like you just said, it's like to recognize your tendencies and know that, as an orthopedic surgeon, I'm really glad that an orthopedic surgeon has a zero tolerance, because that means when they go to, reconstruct my knee or my hip or give me a new one, it's going to be really good.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm like, yay. But having a zero tolerance for golf shots is never going to work, because great golf, I mean, even the player who's someday going to shoot 54 or lower isn't going to mean they hit all perfectly struck golf shots. There's going to be some just okay or good enough ones in there too, but there's that lead to that 54. So, good enough is a concept that people have, really high standards for themselves. It's a hard one for them to get around. And often we hear that when they learn about the value of hitting good enough golf shots, it doesn't mean lowering your standard of excellence, but it's having a mindset about the game. So that's what we often do with those. And then with the contrarians, you actually have to sneak up on them as a coach. And I often just say, if I frame it as if it's something they can't do, they get very impassioned to do it. So I'll say, okay, like, I don't think you can actually, stay focused for 2 seconds over the ball. I don't think you can do that.
Right.
And then their brain just flips it and goes, yes, I can.
Yeah. How interesting.
So, yeah.
Okay, we'll go back to after, which was the next stage of the freeze, so before, during, and after. So after the players hit the shot, that's sort of the middle ground between, say, walking between, say, tee boxes or walking to their next shot, or in between that. What should a golfer be thinking of, or where should their mind be during these times of sort of emptiness?
Yeah. So, well, as you know, we've already talked about, so there's think box before the shot, play box during the shot, and then right after the shot, so the ball's headed to its destination, is what we call the memory box, or it's your post-shot emotional reaction. And many have left that area kind of unattended. They've never, I think I said this earlier in the conversation, they haven't thought of it as a skill of golf. But it's actually a really important skill of golf, because how we emotionally react to our outcome is going to become a memory. And you start to have to think, because emotions are kind of, to just explain the neuroscience of that really simply, emotions are kind of like the glue of experience. So if I have a lot of emotion with an experience, then it becomes a memory. So a child puts their hand on a hot stove, they start crying, it's really emotional, it hurts a lot, they won't go near that hot stove again. So the brain is really hardwired for this at a very primal level. So these emotional reactions we have, they eventually become what will show up in the think box as a memory. So it's why people will walk up to a shot and go, I love this shot. I can't wait to hit it. There's this emotional charge of I can do this. Yeah. Or unfortunately, just the opposite. People will walk up and go, I hate this hole.
Yeah.
Right? That's just a memory.
Yeah.
But that memory had to have been created from a previous time. And it was created from a previous reaction. So the way we look at it is just starting to see that your post-shot reaction is a skill of golf, and that you have two choices: to either be some level of positive on shots you like and shots that are good enough. So we often say some sort of positive emotional response to great, good, and good enough shots and processes, and then something that's not good, or if you want to say it's bad, then you learn to be objective, neutral, factual about that. And just learning that skill can really turn many players' games around. I mean, it's a huge, huge skill.
When you say referring to a bad shot and it being sort of neutral, what do you mean by that? So you don't carry any emotions attached to it?
Yeah, neutral is an interesting word, because we just had a tour player recently say, I don't like neutral. And she tends to be a perfectionist, because she said, it makes me feel like I'm disengaged or I don't care. And she goes, I really care. And I'm like, okay, forget neutral. So then I said, just be factual. You can state a fact about the shot. The ball went in the water and I swung too fast and I wasn't focused. But right. You say it in a very, dissociated, factual, almost clinical way. So you can state facts about it. Yeah. But you're not going, oh my God, what a idiot.
It was you separated the process down of of the things you didn't actually take care of, and say, yes, I could have done this better, I could have done that better.
Yes.
There's a saying of I used to live out San Francisco, Silicon Valley way, and there was extreme ownership, and I've forgotten the saying. It's going to come back to me in a minute. Discipline equals freedom. That was it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have to say that many have left the memory box I've used this word now several times, unattended. So they've let their brain go where it goes. And for many, that is in a negative direction. And I used to think, 15 years ago as a golf teacher, 20 years ago, I used to think it was more behavioral, meaning there are optimists and there are pessimists. And unfortunately, it seems like there's more pessimists in the world, or, half full, half empty kind of people. Mm. But now what we know from the latest neuroscience, and it was a researcher at the University of Virginia, Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, that they discovered the brain has a negativity bias, meaning that when we have outcomes or experiences that are not pleasant or things we don't like, our brain stores those things faster and stronger and deeper than they do positive outcomes or positive experiences. And they figure that the brain has this 3-to-1 negativity bias. So, like three times stronger. And so in some cultures, whether it's a family culture or, country culture or team culture, have even stronger negativity bias. And they know, I'm just going to go off here just for 1 second on this. They know that like high performing teams, groups of people, they have a 6-to-1 positivity bias. But let me just go back, is that if you leave this unattended, your brain's going to go negative. Right. So it's not behavioral, it's more biological. The brain's just designed to do that. It's designed to kind of keep you away from danger, like the hot stove in the earlier example. But the brain doesn't distinguish between a missed putt or a missed drive and a hot stove. So it's doing this negativity bias not for survival, but just because it's there in golf. So we just know that you've got to take a hold of it and at least start to flip this kind of hardwired negativity bias. You need to flip it around to some sort of positivity bias. And I often give, Pia this credit because Annika Sorenstam learned this skill when she was 19 years old. And she learned it from Pia, and she learned the science of it. And from that day forward, she became very, very disciplined about her post-shot reactions. And in many ways, again, it wasn't something people saw. They thought she was more just like, she was a cold, kind of dissociated Swede. No. She learned that as a discipline about, her post-shot reactions. And it led to a pretty darn good career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know any specific sort of drills or sort of routines or rituals she learned during those stages to identify certain elements?
Well, Annika would just close the door really quickly, know. So meaning the ball's where it is, it's done, it's over, close the door, move on.
Okay.
So she had the ability to close the door, in my opinion, very, very quickly.
But did she learn or analyze before she closed the door on a shot?
Not that much. Okay. You could just see it in her body language too when you would watch her. It's like the golf ball's where it's at. Her head might go down for, a millisecond, but then back up and on to the next shot. And when you watch how she runs her business today, it's the same thing.
Interesting. Okay.
Even though she isn't playing golf anymore professionally. Suzanne Pedersen was the exact opposite. She actually had to learn a little intervention with her memory box in this, negative reaction. She, and this is one I think maybe some of the listeners could take advantage of, is that you actually have to do something to give the brain a little space or gap so it isn't an automatic or a habituated negative response. So we just told Suzanne, as soon as the ball leaves the club face or the putter face, that you immediately start counting. And you just count out loud to yourself, 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. And then it gives the brain a little bit of a space to decide on a reaction. And then she used to jokingly sometimes walk by us on the golf course, and she'd come close to the ropes, and she'd be in 1,024 and 1,005, But it's just when you do that, you won't just habitually go, "Oh, what a jerk," or whatever that negative response is. So many need that little bit of gapping.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a great answer. I think so. I think that really covers the before, during, after, and between. Have we missed anything out?
Well, I'll just say one other distinction between shots is that time between shots is actually the most amount of time you spend on the golf course. What we call the whole performance routine, which is think box, play box, memory box. That's going to take up about 30 to 40 minutes of your time on a golf course, for a standard round of golf, whatever a standard round is. But the rest of the time is kind of downtime. It's not active time in golf. So I want to say that many players actually need to learn what to do between shots. And for some, it's that they need to get more adrenaline. Some need to actually disengage and think about other things. So it's a time for us where we feel like you need to actually recharge your body, your mind, and your emotions. And, again, figuring out what works for you. So like a player that we coached on the LPGA, she won a major doing Sudoku puzzles between shots.
I remember Pia mentioning this, yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Annika Sorenstam would often do, she'd cook, do recipes, come up with different recipes she wanted to cook. Ari Jatanagarn, who we coach, she just sits down.
Sits down.
She just sits down on the grass, which is really odd, but she's so impatient.
Right.
That if she doesn't just sit down and kind of almost fully disengage from like the slow play, it's just going to make her really, really irritable.
How interesting.
Yeah.
But there's a three great examples again of people finding what perfectly works for them, isn't it? Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, I'd just fire off some rapid fire questions to sort of wrap this up. It's all been amazing. I was wondering, the common theme between the great players you work with who are on the tour, what are the sort of like habits you find or disciplines they do really, really good at day in and day out?
Yeah, I think it's so simple, but it just needs to be said over and over and over again. They focus on things that are under their control, and they more efficiently let go of things that are not under their control. Yeah.
Can you give us some example of the things that, just to help explain the obvious, the things that are in control?
Yeah, so like, the weather, your pairing, the course conditions, your score, all those things are out of your control. And many players just spend way too much time and energy on those things. Things that are under your control are the things we've already talked about today, your decisions, your awareness or your attention over the ball and during the shot, your post-shot reactions, what you choose to do between shots. Those are all things that are totally under your control.
Great. Okay. I know you're big on sort of mindfulness and journaling. I was wondering perhaps if you could just actually discuss your practices, what you do on a day-to-day basis, because I know you do a bit in that area. Yeah.
So I'm a dabbler in meditation, meaning I'm not super consistent with it every day, but I really enjoy it, and I know it helps a lot. So I've tried lots of different meditations. I'm not so stuck, if you will, that it has to be, a certain discipline of meditation. And but one thing that's been really great for me is doing more what I call the gratefulness journal in the morning. And I really, really like to do that. And some days when I'm, I got to get up and get out of bed and I don't have time to even do my gratefulness journal, I at least make sure I do something called a 5-3-1-1. So before you even get out of bed, you just take a moment and you do 5 deep breaths. And then you just mentally and emotionally do or just recognize and are authentic about feeling 3 things you're grateful for. And so, again, you're still in bed. And then just one smile. Some mornings you have to fake it. But you just put the smile on your face. And then you set one intention for the day. So 5-3-1-1. And then get up and go. But it's just a great way to kind of like, it doesn't take very long, but you just go, okay, I've set the frame for the day.
Amazing. That's really good, simple exercise, which I think everyone can adopt. The gratitude journal, was that, I think Pia mentioned, was the 5-minute journal, was that correct?
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
And it's the one that I really like it. And again, it's just one is you keep doing it, you realize, wow, this really like works. It makes like gratitude active versus it being just a concept. You're actually feeling these things and it's making your life better.
Yes, I will. I actually have one in the house somewhere. I will dig it up. I was inspired to on the last session, and I dig it up and put it back down. But I'm going to try and stick to it. I do journal most mornings, but I've left that one alone for quite some time. But I will come back to it, I think.
And I'll just say Chris, one other area that has interested me, for now almost over 20 years, is really the work that we learned from the Institute of Heart Math and using the Inner Balance app. And we use that in our golf schools as well. But using the Inner Balance app has been really powerful for me.
I haven't come across that. What is that one?
Well, it's an app you just download onto your phone. It's called Inner Balance.
Okay.
And the Institute of Heart Math is who's developed that. But then you need to actually buy something, and then you have to buy this sensor. And this sensor you wear, they've developed it so it connects to your phone or your device via Bluetooth. But you wear this device, and it picks up your heart rate or heartbeat and converts it into heart rate variability. And in heart math terms, it gives you a coherence score. So it's actually the more you actually feel positive emotions and the more you feel like gratitude, like genuinely feel it, you're able to get a higher coherence score, or your heart's rhythm or heart rate variability gets smoother.
Interesting.
So we've been using that with golfers for many, many years. But I just find it personally, too, something that I go back and rely on quite a bit.
Okay, I'll look that one up.
Like life is getting a little little edgy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, I need to sit down and do some more Inner Balance.
Interesting. Okay, I will put that in the show notes for the listeners and download that myself. On those apps, my girlfriend actually has just launched an app this week. It's called Innate Mood. Sorry for the plug, but I think it's actually it's helped me out a lot, and it's very interesting. So basically, it's a video reflective journal. So you basically record a video of yourself as a journal, and then it will ping you back another video of an opposite emotion. So, for example, one day you're feeling really joyful or really powerful. You record that video, but then what it will do afterwards, it will send you back another video of when you were feeling really sad or down, and then you get to see the difference in your behavior and the way you speak, the way you talk. It's very, very powerful.
I think that sounds fantastic, because many of us are not aware of what our facial expressions are, our voice, all those things. And when you get a heightened awareness of it, you can have choice.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So I don't know. I think it'd be very interesting for golfers to use, actually, especially sort of after their rounds. And before the rounds.
Well, we've done, maybe a clunkier version of that, but that is, we'll videotape players in their post-shot reactions, or, what they look like between shots, and then show them those videos.
Oh, interesting.
And they're often like surprised at, what they thought they looked happy, or they looked, pleased, and they don't at all.
Yeah. No, you can pick up a lot from your facial sort of recognition. And one thing I have picked up is that on bad days, my eyes move around a lot more, which I guess implies I'm very more analytical, which would be the same on the golf course. My off days would be, be more in the head than as opposed to playing more sort of grounded golf.
Yeah. Oh, Chris, that's awesome. I'm just curious. I know we're kind of going off, but was this based a lot on Paul Ekman's work?
I don't know, but I will look up that name.
Okay, yeah, because he's one of the guys that who's done a lot of lot of research on facial expressions.
Was it Paul Ekman?
Ekman. Yeah.
EKM.
AN, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
He's done interesting because he's spent a lot of time with the Dalai Lama. And his daughter Eve now works at the University of San Francisco, and also not the University of San Francisco. Excuse me, UCal Berkeley, and teaches a lot of meditation.
Oh, interesting, fantastic! Yeah. I will look that up. I'm going to put you on the spot now. I always tell the guests to prepare an action challenge for the listeners. This is, and I think I forgot to send this to you, but this is something you deeply believe in, which has greatly impacted your life. It can be on or off the golf course, but you think if the listeners would do and take up on, it would greatly improve their lives as well. So if you can possibly think of something.
Well, I mean, we've actually touched on it a bit today in our discussion, but I think that our innate intelligence, our inner intelligence, not our brain intelligence, is always there. Okay. And if we just are quiet enough and we sit with ourselves, that we can hear it and then we can act on it. I think it's always there. I think the heart is very, very, very wise. Just sometimes it gets crowded out. It can't be heard. Mm-hmm. So listen in and trust that you're very, very wise inside.
When you say listen in, can you explain to us what you mean by that?
Yeah, that. So often we have hits of intuition, intelligence over intellect, but we don't hear it because our mind is racing so fast, and there's so much self-talk that we don't actually get the hit. So I think this is again where meditation or learning to quiet ourselves down so we can hear that wisdom come forth. And I think that shows up so much in golf. I really do. I think it's so applicable to golf. Can I just tell a quick story to finish that? How Absolutely. It relates to golf? Yeah. So, we've coached Ariya Jutanugarn for the last 4 years. And 2 years ago, she won the Women's U.S. Open. And she had, I think it was a 5-shot lead with 9 holes to go and lost it. I mean, totally lost it and ended up in a playoff. And as she said, I mean, she really, she fought hard those 9 holes, but, she had some pretty bad shots. And so she goes off into this playoff and she had this conversation going on in her head, like, oh, the pie's just not meant to be. I've lost this lead. Now I'm in this playoff. This player's going to win, this other player. And then she stopped herself and she said something really wise, came up that said, well, just make sure you give it your best no matter what in this playoff. So they tied the first playoff hole. I think they tied the second playoff hole. And then the third playoff hole, she hit it in the bunker and she had a horrible lie. Brad Faxon was there and he told us, he goes, I don't know how she hit that shot, but she walked in with total trust, no thinking about what a bad lie she had, just total trust that she could hit the shot, hit this incredible bunker shot, close, made the putt. She won the U.S. Open. Wow. Yeah. And it's again, we sometimes tell these stories to ourselves. It gets in the way of this wisdom that's right there if we just listen in.
I think that's a real beautiful way to finish this and wrap things up, I think. Thank you so much, Lynn, for everything on this chat. This has been amazing.
Chris, you're welcome, and love to do it again with you sometime.
No, it's been really, really good fun. I would love. Where can people find you, or is any other material online we can send them over to?
Yeah. Well, the best place to get a hold of us is vision54.com. Yep. And also, if those who, when you start, hitting balls on the range and you want some help with how to make your practice around more the think box, the play box, memory box, and between shots, is go to our iPhone app, which is a real easy way to get started with us. And
what is the iPhone app?
Yeah, it's in we don't have it in Android Vision. We only have it with the iPhone, but it's in the Apple App Store. And the app is just Vision 54.
Okay.
And it's chock full of things to do.
Amazing. Cool. We'll include that to all the listeners. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Lynn, thanks again for your time. Really, really appreciate it. And stay safe and stay strong out there. And we'll
thanks,
again,
Chris. And you too.
Hopefully catch up for round 2 at some point. That'd be amazing.
Okay. We'd love that.
Okay. Take care, Lynn. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.